People ask me what it felt like. They want something dramatic, a klaxon, a weapons lock, the captain bellowing orders across a frantic bridge. I tell them the truth, which is always a disappointment. It was quiet. It was so quiet I could hear the ventilation cycling through the secondary, manifold behind my chair, and the soft triple click of my sensor officer resetting her display, and nothing else. That is what first contact sounds like when you do it right. You hear everything you are choosing not to do. Pale Verdict had been running cold for 11 days when the Kethavari survey fleet found us. Cold running is what it sounds like. We suppressed the reactor to its lowest sustainable output, enough to keep life support, passive sensors, and command cognition online. Nothing else. No active ranging, no transponder pulse. From the outside we would read as thermal debris, a dense, irregular mass drifting on the far edge of the Rayshon corridor, with the heat signature of a dead rock, and none of the geometry of anything that ought be there. That was the intent. The Rayshon corridor sat at the intersection of 3 Kethavari navigational lanes, and Command wanted to know how often they used it, what tonnage they moved, what formation doctrine their survey elements ran. Pale Verdict was the instrument of that observation. 11 days, low power, tight crew rotation, no transmissions. I had done cold running operations before, on smaller hulls in quieter spaces. I had never done one inside a Federation transit corridor with 48 crew and a ship the size of a city block. I should describe Pale Verdict. She was a Colossus-class line Dreadnought. Blocky was the polite word for it, and the crew had less polite ones. She was built for mass and endurance rather than elegance, and her designers had made no apologies for that. 900 meters from bow to stern, forced on every outer surface, carrying enough gun emplacements to reduce a small moon's infrastructure to gravel. She had been in 3 fleet actions, and 1 siege, and her hull showed it. Soot lines along the port-side gun decks, a stress fracture in the secondary dorsal plating that had been welded and re-welded twice, particular gray-brown weathering of a ship that had been in hard vacuum for years at a time and knew exactly what it was. She was not beautiful. She did not need to be. On day 11, my passive sensor officer, Len Carth, said 2 words. Federation signatures. I was at my station. I did not stand, I said. How many? 7 hulls bearing 315 relative, approach vector consistent with corridor transit. Tonnage reads light, survey configuration. Leading element is putting out an active ranging pulse, broad spectrum. A pause. They've hit us twice already. We're returning as mass. 7 hulls. Survey configuration meant they were not a combat element. The Kethavari did not mix their survey and military roles, which was one of the things our analysts had determined about them over the 3 years since they'd made themselves known to the outer beacons. The Federation was a coalition of 7 smaller species, none of them individually significant, all of them collectively cautious. They had not fired on anything human. They had not been tested. Hold all signatures, I said. Nothing active. We let them classify us. We waited 40 minutes. The survey fleet slowed. They were doing what any competent spacefarer does. When they find an anomalous mass in a corridor, they thought they knew. They were looking at it. Their active ranging swept us repeatedly, building a picture. I watched Carth's display refresh with each sweep. At their resolution, Pale Verdict was a dense metallic irregular object approximately 900 meters along its primary axis. The geometry would be starting to resolve. The mass return was not geological. Their lead vessel transmitted. It went to our passive array, recorded without answering. The translation came through on my secondary display. The Kethavari Federation used a layered tonal language that our linguists had been working on for 18 months. The translation software gave me a confidence rating alongside every line. This one came back at 81%. It said, Unregistered object, Shin Corridor Designation 74. State origin and function or be logged as derelict for survey processing. Survey processing. They thought they had found an abandoned hulk. Something dead, drifting, available for classification and salvage notation. I looked at my first officer, Hayne Tessick. She was watching me with the specific expression she used when she was waiting to see which version of me was going to answer a hard moment. I had served with Hayne for 6 years. She knew all my versions. Full power, I said. All systems. Escorts to cloak on my mark. Active ranging online. Gunport stay closed. She relayed it without a word. What happened next took 11 seconds. Shh. I know this because the incident log timestamps every power state transition, and I have read that log more times than I can count. In 11 seconds, Pale Verdict went from a cold rock in the dark to a fully operational Colossus-class line, Dreadnought, running at combat readiness. Reactor came up like a sun igniting. Her hull thermals spiked across every spectrum the Kethavari survey fleet sensors could read. Active ranging swept them in return. Tight, precise, the kind of focused beam that tells another ship's crew that everything about them is now. And at the mark, 3 Wedge-class destroyers materialized from it from nothing, a loose triangle around the survey fleet. Ion's Ferric Storm, Kale's Answer, and Pale Reckoning, each of them running full power, none of them with gun ports open. We were not threatening them. We were showing them what had been there the whole time. The Kethavari survey fleet went silent for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I want to be precise about that silence because it matters. 4 minutes and 17 seconds is a long time on a bridge. Crew held their stations. No one spoke. The targeting systems were live and painting solutions across all 7 Federation hulls, and I had given no order to do anything with those solutions, and my crew understood that. Haynes stood at her post and watched her board, watched her passive array. The rest of them did their jobs, because that is what you do, and because the worst thing a crew can communicate in a moment like that is uncertainty. When the Federation lead vessel transmitted again, the confidence rating was 78%. It said, "We have no classification for this vessel type." I picked up my transmission key. I had thought about what I would say if it came to saying something. I had written nothing down, because written things can become recited things, and recited things sound like recited things. "Federation survey element," I said. "This is Captain Vorn Adel, commanding Jens Pale Verdict, Terran Interstellar Navy. You are in a corridor that intersects Terran navigational interest. We have been here for 11 days. We have not interfered with your transit or your operations. We are not interfering now. We will return to our own space on our own schedule."
You may proceed on your heading.
Another silence, shorter this time. 90 seconds, their lead vessel came about. Slowly, the way a careful commander moves. Not retreat, not flight, but a considered reorientation. The remaining 6 hulls followed in good order. Formation discipline intact. No panic, no scatter. I noted that with professional respect. They were frightened, and they were holding it together, and those are not incompatible things. They were out of passive range in 3 hours. We resumed cold running for another 6 hours before I ordered us onto our return heading. The navigational notation arrived through a relay beacon 41 days after we cleared the corridor. It was logged with the Federation's standard cartographic authority and entered formally into their navigational registry. The Reshen corridor, designation 7-4, was reclassified. The new notation read Sovereign Transient, Terran. Approach protocols required, not a treaty, not a communique, not an apology or a demand. A notation in a navigation registry is how the Kethavari Federation recorded things they had decided to be permanently true. They had encountered something they had no classification for. And they had taken 11 days of data, plus 4 minutes and 17 seconds of silence and 90 seconds of listening to a human captain say nothing more alarming than "you may proceed," and they had made a decision about what we were. They called us sovereign. They required their own people to approach us with protocols. I think about that sometimes. I think about the 11 seconds it took Pale Verdict to become what she was, and the 4 minutes and 17 seconds my crew held without a word, and the 90 seconds a Kethavari commander spent deciding what to do with information that had no precedent in their registry. The guns were never the message. The guns were just the grammar. The message was that we had been there for 11 days and done nothing with them. And we were leaving, and we would be back, and they would not know when. That is what they logged. That is what they knew. That was enough.